Jose Canseco wrote in his book Juice, "The challenge is not to find a top player who has used steroids. The challenge is to find a top player who hasn't." Today I will tell you a little about the history of performance-enhancing drugs. Baseball is known as America's favorite pastime, and these players are role models for many kids. How these drugs are affecting it should be important to everyone. This subject has always intrigued me, therefore I have done extensive research on PEDs in baseball. I have read many articles about PEDs and have also read the two most notable books on this subject. The first being Juice, a book that the self-proclaimed godfather of PEDs, Jose Canseco, wrote, and the other being Game of Shadows, which was written about the most famous steroid case in the history of sports. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the early years of PEDs in baseball. A little known time of performance-enhancing drugs. The next era I will tell you about is from the early 90s to current day. Most of you probably are familiar with it. Lastly, I will tell you about the records that these performance-enhancing drugs broke. Now let's talk about baseball's early years and their type of performance-enhancing substance. Major League Baseball began in 1875. According to NPR.org, a Pittsburgh pitcher named Jim Pud Galvin became the first baseball player to be widely known for using a performance enhancer in 1889, only 14 years after baseball began. Pud's performance-enhancing substance wasn't necessarily a drug, but the concept is the same. Pud ingested something called the elixir of brown sequoia, which is basically testosterone before pitching in a game in 1889. From the rare early use of performance-enhancing substances, I will now tell you about what is known as the steroid era in baseball. The early 90s to current day is when steroids really became prevalent in baseball. According to the New York Times, baseball banned steroids in 1991. The early 90s was the pinnacle of steroid use in baseball. Rampant use of steroids in this era is widely documented. The problem may have lied in the fact that baseball did not start testing for steroids until 2001, according to CBSNews.com. Even after testing began, PEDs were made specifically to avoid tests. The players of this era broke many records, and I'm going to tell you a little about the records they broke. During the steroid era, many of baseball's most prestigious records fell. Research taken from BaseballAlmanac.com reveals that Roger Maris's record of 61 single-season home runs stood for 37 years before being broken by two players known to use PEDs, Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, in the same year, with McGwire eventually holding the record. Only 3 short years later, another known steroid user, and probably the most notable by the name of Barry Bonds, broke that record again. A USA Today survey asking players' opinions on records broken by steroid users revealed an overwhelming opinion on those records. Here's what it revealed. In February 17th to March 9th, a survey of 568 players, 79% said they believe steroids played some role in record-breaking performances by high-profile players. And 27% said they believed that illegal performance-enhancing drugs were a major contributor to recent statistical achievements. In conclusion, it is my opinion that baseball has been overtaken by this rampant PED use. We have learned of the early case of Pud Galvin using testosterone derived from animal gonads. Also, we've talked a little about current generation of players and their steroid use. Lastly, we talked about one of Major League Baseball's most heralded records being broken 3 times in the course of 3 seasons. As I said earlier, this issue is very important to me because I love baseball and I want to watch it in its purest form. Hopefully now you will feel the same way.